Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories, 8 in total. I hope you all enjoy them. I always do my best to make sure that the stories are as good as they can possibly be, and this video is no exception. If you do enjoy, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's set a realistic like goal this time. I've been asking for like 5 likes, 6 likes. Let's see if we can hit 500. I think if everybody took just a quick second, we could maybe do it. I'd really appreciate it. It helps with the algorithm, and it also just lets me know I'm doing a good job. It lets me know that you're enjoying the content that I'm creating. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. I post content just like this all of the time. We've been at it for years, and I love what I do, and I'd love to have you here on this journey with us. Telling a friend, word of mouth is super underrated. I'd really appreciate that too. Anyways, let's get into the stories. Sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. It all started when I bought my first house. I was in my late 20s, so you can imagine how happy I was. It was a beautiful house in the suburbs. The outside walls were made of exposed brick, something I personally liked a lot, and there was plenty of space. 2 bedrooms. Both of them with double beds, a modern kitchen, a big living room, 2 bathrooms, a basement, and an attic. My girlfriend at the time was uncertain about whether she would move in with me or not, since she'd have to quit her job. I found this house on Facebook at a surprisingly cheap price, but since it looked good, I didn't think much before sending a message to the realtor. We visited the house a few days later, and I was certain about buying it before even entering. The realtor was nice to me and showed me around, telling me all about the inside of the house. He asked me a few questions, like if I'd lived alone, if I had children, if I was new in town. It seemed a little bit too personal, but I thought he was just making conversation. The house was furnished, so I asked if I'd have to pay for all the furniture, but he told me that the previous owners left it behind after a divorce and the laziness to decide who takes what. I hope to achieve this level of richness someday. The basement was kinda small and had a bunch of old things like empty food cans on a metal shelf and boxes filled with school books. The realtor told me about a mouse and spider infestation down there, and how none of the owners ever managed to fix it. I didn't care at all, and doubted I'd ever come down here. When we got upstairs, I noticed something. There were cameras around the house. I asked the realtor about it, but he assured me the cameras never worked and were installed by one of the first residents, who had 3 kids. Again, I didn't mind, especially when he pointed to some cut and bare wires hanging from the cameras. I ended up buying it and even received a first house discount, as the realtor called it. I was so happy. I quickly brought some of the furniture I had at my parents' house and moved here. My girlfriend ended up joining me after some weeks, and that looked like the perfect house to start a family in. We were loving the experience of living together. She'd make us lunch, I'd make us dinner, and we had a good sleep every night. When we lived with our parents, both of us had single beds, which made sleeping together kind of uncomfortable, and made our own rules. Everything was lovely until our 3rd week living there. My girlfriend woke up in the middle of the night saying she heard a noise downstairs. I got up and lit our bedroom light, trying to calm her down. She was positive she heard something that sounded like a knock on a window. Me, as the supportive boyfriend, got downstairs to prove to her that there was nothing to worry about. It was a tree branch. I started laughing and even took a video of the sound it made. I showed her that she didn't need to be paranoid and that I'd always protect her, even from a tree branch. I caressed her head until we both fell asleep. I knew nothing was up, but for some reason, I felt that she kept trying to convince me that it wasn't just a tree branch. After that night, some of my things started to go missing, like a single sock, some ties, my deodorant, and even some of my underwear. I knew she was the one hiding them, so I didn't say anything, because if I looked concerned, she'd win this little game. Another night, My girlfriend woke me up, but this time she heard footsteps nearby our bedroom, and I told her it was nothing, but she insisted. I, again, got up and opened our bedroom door. Nothing was there, but after I showed her the empty corridor, we both heard footsteps coming down from the first floor. She started screaming and crying and even hid under the bed. I locked our door and quickly got downstairs, turning all the lights on and examining every part of the house. Again, I found nothing. I got upstairs and asked her what that was all about. She ended up confessing that, when she was a child, 3 men broke into her house and kept her whole family hostage while they stole a bunch of things, and even threatened to kill them if they didn't shut up. One of the men held a gun to my girlfriend's head. That's where all the trauma comes from. I held her close and promised that this would never happen to us. The next day, I called a locksmith to install 2 more locks in the front and back door, an alarm system to warn us if anyone came nearby the house, and even put bars in every window to prevent anyone from breaking in. All of this made my girlfriend feel safer, and it showed. I think everything went clean after I installed all of that. Some things kept going missing, but I was probably being inattentive. Since my girlfriend stopped listening to things inside the house at night, she's a lot more happy and hopeful about starting our family in this house. I love her so much. We went to the basement to inspect if there was anything we could turn that room to, because it was actually kinda cozy. We only had to throw some things away, like the food and the boxes. She said I could do some kind of man cave since I loved playing video games. But I suggested a playroom to our future kids, and she loved the idea. She kissed me on the lips and told me about how excited she was. On that day, I knew I had to make her my wife as soon as possible. I bought the engagement rings and hid the little box they came in inside of a teddy bear I bought my girlfriend on a trip to Paris. It had a zipper on its back, so I just hid the little box inside the foam and put it back to its place. I waited a few days to propose because I wanted to make something impressive, like go on a trip with her or take her to the restaurant we met. I think 2 weeks have passed since I bought the rings. Me and my girlfriend were chilling on the couch, almost getting to the finale of Game of Thrones, and I was sleepy as hell. I told her I was almost falling asleep and that she could watch it alone, and she agreed. I made her popcorn before going to bed and kissed her on the lips goodnight. I woke up with a scream downstairs. My girlfriend's scream, followed by loud steps and finally a door slam, then silence. I freaked out. I started screaming, calling her. I looked to the living room from the top of the staircase. The popcorn bowl was empty and there was no sign of her. I called the police immediately, my fingers shaking so much I could barely dial the right number. I sat on the grass in front of my house and waited for them to come. The police came surprisingly quick. While one of them searched the house, the other asked me about what happened. I had nothing to explain. Someone just kidnapped my girlfriend out of nowhere. That's all I knew. The other officer came near us and told me that there was no sign of a break-in, and asked me if the front door was locked when I came outside to wait for them, to which I said yes. They asked me if she sleepwalked. No. If someone had the keys. No. If someone would have any reason to hurt my girlfriend. No. If someone could be frogging. But that seemed absurd, and I would have noticed by now. After all these questions, they said they had no reason to believe she was abducted, and told me that she could have gotten angry about something I did and wanted to take a break, and if she actually didn't come back, I should call them again. They just left. That made my blood boil. Anyone with a brain would realize that no one storms out in the middle of the night. I heard a scream. I heard loud footsteps. Someone must have picked the lock, or maybe someone had a copy of the keys. That didn't make any sense. What if someone was actually inside my house? I took the whole day to search for evidence, a single strand of hair even. I needed something that could prove I wasn't crazy. I turned every room upside down, even the bathrooms. No sign of anyone other than me and her. I thought I was going insane, really. I climbed the stairs to the attic. I've never even gone there, so I made my heart pound even faster. It was a dark and claustrophobic room without any windows. I illuminated the room with my cell phone's flashlight, but I couldn't find anything to get concerned with. Just a couple more boxes and furniture covered in plastic. Then, something stood out. A beautiful painting of some dude. There were hearts all around his face, like it had been done by a lover. I started to sob so hard I fell on my knees. What if she did leave me? What if the policemen were right? I got out of the attic and went to the living room once again. I fell on the couch, defeated. I looked at our photographs hanging on the walls, in photo frames at the side of the TV. I got up to reach the teddy bear from Paris, and hugged it like it was her. My heart immediately froze. I couldn't feel the ring box. I opened the zipper on its back and noticed the box and the rings were gone. What the... That changed everything. This wasn't just a coincidence. Someone stole the rings, and I'm sure it wasn't her, because we talked about it. That gave me the gas to keep searching for her. The last stop was the basement. It got even dustier than the last time I came here. I opened the boxes, tried moving some stuff, and examined the floor with my cell phone's flashlight. I looked at every corner, every single part of the ceiling, and when I pointed the flashlight to the metal shelf, I noticed that some parts of it were completely clean, even though most of it was covered by dust. I tried to keep calm. I needed to find my girlfriend. When I squatted to examine the lowest shelf, I saw it. A door, a little door, around 4 foot, looking like it wasn't intended to be found. There were a lot of things on the shelves. That's why I never saw anything. My heart started racing and I felt like I was gonna faint at any moment. I moved the shelf to the side and got in front of the door. Since I was almost 6'1", I knew I'd have to crawl. I know this sounds insane. I know I should have just gone upstairs and called the police, but I swear my adrenaline was so spiked I couldn't stop. I opened the little door. When I got up from the floor, my jaw dropped. There was a house inside of that little door. It looked exactly like one of those studio apartments. There was a bed, a small kitchen, a TV, a couch, a horizontal freezer, and a separate room that was probably a bathroom. Someone was living inside of my house. All of the walls were filled with pictures of me. All of the walls. Hundreds of pictures. Pictures that I'm asleep. Pictures that I'm naked. Pictures that I'm just walking. Pictures of me smiling. And no pictures of my girlfriend. What was this? Some kind of sick joke of hers? I actually thought for a second that this was just a prank and that she'd propose herself with the rings. For a moment, I felt relieved. That's until I looked behind me. I saw a canvas with a painting of me, almost finished, filled with a bunch of hearts, just like the painting I saw in the attic. At that moment, I heard the sound of a toilet being flushed. I ran like crazy towards the little door, not looking back. Someone was coming from that bathroom towards me. I could hear the loud steps just like I heard the night my girlfriend went missing. I crawled and managed to get out of the room, so I kicked the little door and ran to the top of the stairs as quickly as I could. When I looked back, just for a second I saw his face. He was passing through the little door, looking at me with a giant smile and wide eyes. He was terrifying. I quickly locked the basement door and dialed 911. They came quickly. I didn't hear anything from the basement while I waited, but maybe that's because I was breathing so loud I couldn't even hear my thoughts. The police went to the basement and found him lying on the bed. They took him in handcuffs. He had black, long hair, was completely pale, was really hairy, was around 5'9" and kind of fat. He had a smile on his face the whole time and kept staring at me, licking his lips. I was disgusted by that creature. I noticed he was wearing one of the engagement rings I bought. He was the one who stole it. They put him inside of the police car. When I looked at him, I saw he was kissing the blurry window, looking back at me. He kissed it with his white tongue. I threw up on the grass, disgusted. I wanted to kill him with my bare hands. One of the officers came and told me if I knew that the dude had access to the cameras. I told him that the realtor told me that they never even worked, but the officer said otherwise. The basement TV showed the view of all the cameras inside the house, and that's why this man always knew what we were doing. And when we were asleep, we realized that the realtor could have something to do with all of this, but that required some more investigation. Some more officers came from the basement carrying what looked like a body wrapped in plastic. I never prayed so hard that this body was anyone else, but not my girlfriend. I started tearing up when I saw it. I asked to see the body. It was her. My lovely girlfriend, completely frozen. Her body had bloodstains and wounds. I lied on the grass and cried like someone was stabbing me. I should have listened to her when she said something was off about this house. I should have moved out when I had the chance. My whole world was shattered at that moment. Some time has passed since the incident, and my therapist insisted I should share my story with other people, serving as a way to vent and to warn others. But I want to give this some closure. Turns out this man has done this multiple times. The police found evidence of more than 3 crimes on his part of the basement. He always fell in love with the man and killed the girlfriend/wife, and I sincerely don't know how the police never found him. The killer was presumed dead when he was only 10 years old, apparently died in a car accident with his parents, since the police report said that his brother was the only survivor. He was living there for more than 30 years. And you know who knew about this? The realtor, his own brother. He was the one attracting victims so that his psycho brother could have some fun. Funny thing is, I didn't even mention that my girlfriend would move in. Does that mean he just wanted to kill me? Seduce me? I have no clue and never will. Also, the realtor ran away when his brother got arrested and is still missing to this day. I still blame myself for it. I still wish I'd done it all differently. So here I am, opening myself to a bunch of strangers online. I only have a few lessons to share with you, and take them seriously. Always suspect good properties at a ridiculously low price. And above all, listen to what your partner has to say, and take them seriously. If I believed what my girlfriend had to say, she could be still here with me. I've always preferred solitude. No office politics, no customers, just me, my rig, and the hum of the open road. All I need to do is get from point A to B. And since I'm paid per mile, I don't mind the long cross-state treks. The only downside is that I don't see home nearly as often, but when I do, I make sure to spend as much time as I can with my family and friends. Besides that, I love blasting music, eating greasy fast food, and driving through the beautiful scenery America has to offer. But lately, the road hasn't felt as peaceful. I don't know when it started, maybe a few weeks ago, maybe months. It's hard to tell. Some nights the highway feels different, longer, emptier, like I'm driving through a place that doesn't quite exist. I figured it was just exhaustion playing tricks on me. That happens when you push yourself too hard. That's why I started setting timers to pull over and nap every few hours. Sleep deprivation turns the brain into an unreliable narrator, and I have no interest in waking up wrapped around a telephone pole. But even with rest breaks, something about tonight felt off. It started small. I thought my radio was acting up. I was driving through the middle of nowhere when my CB switched off, and I heard faint chatter, just a soft murmur, beneath the hum of the engine. I reached for the dial, thinking maybe a signal had bled through, but the moment my fingers touched it, silence. It scared the hell out of me, but I knew better than to let my mind wander. Hallucinations happen when you're sleep deprived. That's why I stick to my rest schedule, even if it means delaying deliveries. I wasn't about to let fatigue get the best of me. A few minutes later, I heard it again. A whisper of static, a voice crackling through the quiet, just barely loud enough to catch. It was like someone had picked up a transmission on the edge of the range. I listened harder, leaning toward the speaker. The voice wasn't speaking English. It wasn't speaking any language I knew. I turned the CB on, scanning through channels. Nothing, just empty air. That should have been the end of it. Just a faulty radio. That's what I told myself, but then the voices came from somewhere else. The passenger seat. I heard my name. No, I felt my name. Not out loud, not like someone calling from another room, but as if the suggestion of sound had brushed the back of my mind. A whispered thought that wasn't my own. A chill crawled up my spine. I gripped the wheel tighter, flicking my eyes toward the empty seat. My duffel bag was buckled in, my thermos resting against it. Nothing out of place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was sitting there. My stomach twisted. I knew it wasn't real. I knew it, but the sensation lingered, like the ghost of a hand brushing against my arm. I blinked hard, forcing my focus back to the road. It's just exhaustion, I told myself, just my mind playing tricks on me. But that's what scared me the most. My dad had been sharp once, a man who could play the piano with his eyes closed, never needing a calendar, always remembering every school event. Then in his early 40s, he started forgetting things. Small things at first, where he left his keys, the name of a town he'd passed through 100 times. Then one day, he forgot how to drive. Early onset Alzheimer's runs in the family, and now here I was, hearing things that weren't there. I clenched my jaw, gripping the wheel tighter. It's just fatigue. I had to believe that, because the alternative, that was something I wasn't ready to face. After a while, everything seemed to settle. The rain started drumming against the windshield, steady and relentless, blurring the world beyond the wipers. I rubbed my eyes with one hand, keeping the other firm on the wheel. The miles stretched endlessly, an unbroken ribbon of wet pavement cutting through the dark. Then, click. I flinched. The sound was unmistakable. The passenger seatbelt had just fastened itself. My heart lurched into my throat. My gaze snapped to the belt, now pulled taut against the empty seat. I swallowed thickly. The truck hit a bump, jolting slightly, and the belt tightened, like something was sitting there. For a long, terrible moment, I just stared at it. The belt remained locked, stiff and secure, as if someone invisible just settled in for the ride. A deep, gnawing chill crept down my spine. I was alone, but something was buckled in. I reached over, hesitated for half a second, then unbuckled it. The belt snapped back into place with a sharp whip. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Probably just a sensor issue, just exhaustion, just my imagination. I tried to believe that. For a moment, everything was fine. Just keep driving. I glanced at the clock on the dash, 1:43 a.m. Still a couple of hours from the nearest rest stop. I sighed and reached for my coffee, but it had long gone cold. As I maneuvered around potholes, something glistened ahead. Roadkill, maybe. At least, I thought it was roadkill. I slowed my truck as I got closer, narrowing my eyes against the rain. It was a deer lying on its back just off the road, its legs stiff and pointed toward the sky. The downpour made it hard to see, but something about it looked especially wrong. Its neck was mangled, strands of muscle and sinew exposed where the head should have been. I assumed it had been torn off in a collision, But as I kept looking, my stomach twisted. The chest and abdomen had been carved open, hollowed of all its organs. It was disgusting, to say the least, but I chalked it up to a deer falling prey to a bear. Yet as I studied the scene, I realized this wasn't the work of a wild animal. The body was too clean. No gore, no scattered organs. Just a hollowed out shell, its rib cage exposed, its insides missing like they'd been scooped out with surgical precision. The hide along its back was peeled open, a long, deliberate slit running down its spine. The edges of the wound weren't fresh. They had been seared shut. And inside? Nothing. Just an empty, black void where life used to be. I pressed the gas, eager to put distance between me and the carcass, but just as I glanced in my mirror, my stomach dropped. Something was stepping into the deer's hollowed chest. It looked almost human-shaped, but the neck was too long, the shoulders too broad. My heart stalled as I watched it slowly descend into the cavity. Then the deer jerked, not like a dying animal, not like something taking its last breath, like something inside was testing the controls. Its front legs slammed into the pavement, stiff and awkward, as if they had locked into place. The back legs twitched, then kicked out all at once, sending the body into a brief, unnatural spasm. Then in one violent motion, it stood. I slammed my foot against the gas pedal, barreling down the road. Whatever I had just seen was horrifying, and I wasn't about to stick around to see what it would do next. After a few minutes of reckless speed, I forced myself to calm down and drive safely. I tried to rationalize what I had just experienced. It had to be a hallucination, a trick of exhaustion and paranoia. The darkness, the rain, my overworked brain. It all made sense. I was just going a little crazy from lack of sleep. Then I heard the clacking. It was impossibly loud. Clack, clack, clack. The sharp rhythm of hooves striking the pavement sent a surge of cold terror through my veins. Tears welled in my eyes as I dared to look to the side. Beside my truck, moving impossibly fast, was the same headless deer. Its body contorted with rage, its bones pushing through the skin as it ran. From the hollowed chest, long black hair flowed wildly in the wind. I slammed my foot onto the gas again, praying I could get away. 50 miles per hour, 60, 70. I pushed past 80, but it didn't matter. The deer matched my speed effortlessly, almost tauntingly. It kept the same distance beside my truck, screeching with every step. Then it closed the gap. I barely had time to react before two gaunt, skeletal arms emerged from the deer's chest. Each finger ended in a curved, claw-like nail. The creature reached out, slamming its talons into my truck door, piercing through the metal like wet paper. My stomach turned as it clung to the side of the truck and pulled itself further out of the deer's chest, its upper body clawing free. Not just pulling, tearing. The deer's ribcage snapped like brittle wood, splitting apart as the thing inside forced itself loose. Strands of flesh and sinew stretched between them, clinging, resisting, like the body didn't want to let it go. The deer collapsed onto the road behind me, swallowed by darkness. I had no clue what to do. My instincts took over, and I started swerving left and right, trying to shake it off. But it held on, climbing and clawing its way to the roof of my truck. Then slowly, it lowered itself over the windshield. That's when I saw its face, and it was disgusting. Its skin was deathly pale, stretched tight over sunken cheeks. Its hollow, dead eyes bore into me, every muscle in its face twisted with unrelenting hatred. The moment our eyes met, it screamed. The sound wasn't just loud, it was unbearable. My skull felt like it was splitting open. My eardrums popped, a sharp burst of pain exploding inside my head. Blood dripped from my nose. My vision swam, the world tilting sideways. Then it started slamming its head against the windshield, over and over and over. Each impact sent web-like cracks through the glass, larger and larger until... smash. The thing punched through the windshield and its claws wrapped around my throat. I couldn't breathe and my vision darkened as my grip on the steering wheel weakened. I tried slamming on the brakes, hoping the sudden stop would send it flying, but it held on with monstrous strength. My hands fell from the wheel. Without my guidance, the truck veered off the road, and then nothing. When I started to come to, I tasted blood pooling in my mouth. A sharp, crushing pain bloomed in my chest as my senses slowly returned. Smoke clung to the air, thick and acrid, burning my throat with every shallow breath. My head throbbed, and when I tried to move, a bolt of pain shot through my ribs. I forced my eyes open. My truck was wrecked, and the front end crumpled around a massive tree. Steam and smoke curled from the destroyed hood. The windshield shattered into jagged pieces. A deep gash throbbed along my forehead, and my hands trembled as I tried to push myself up. I looked down at my torso, lodged deep inside with a large metal fragment when blood slowly drained from the wound. It was when I looked up that I saw it. Pinned between the hood of my truck and the tree was a long, gangly leg. The skin was sickly pale, stretched taut over knotted tendons. The limb twitched, and the rest of the creature was nowhere to be seen. I sucked in a ragged breath, my entire body screaming in pain as I searched for my phone. My fingers were slick with blood as I fumbled beneath my seat, finally brushing against the shattered screen. It was barely functional, with crimson dripping from my hands. I wiped the screen clean enough to see the numbers. 911. I hit the call button, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The dial tone droned in my ear, dull and distant beneath the haze of adrenaline and exhaustion. My vision swam, my pulse pounding like a war drum against my skull. Then, after what felt like an eternity, 911, what's your emergency? Relief crashed over me, so sudden and overwhelming that it almost drowned out the searing pain from the gashes across my body. My words tumbled out, frantic and uneven. I was attacked. Some kind of animal. My truck got run off the road and I crashed straight into a tree. I need medical help now. Bring guns. I think it's still close. I forced myself to keep it vague. The last thing I needed was to sound insane and have them hang up on me. Sir, are you injured? The voice was steady and practiced, but I could hear a hint of urgency. Yes, yeah, I think so. I'm bleeding. My head, my chest. I swallowed hard, the pain finally catching up to me. I don't know how bad, but I have a piece of metal lodged in my stomach. I can barely move. Okay, stay with me. Can you tell me your location? I sucked in a shaky breath, forcing myself to look around. The highway was a blur of rain and darkness, my truck's headlights barely cutting through the mist. I was heading south on Route 19, maybe 20 miles past the last rest stop. I don't know exactly where. That's okay. We'll track your phone's GPS. A few keystrokes clicked through the line. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me, okay? I nodded before realizing they couldn't see me. Okay. A few seconds passed. Then, Sir, you mentioned an animal. Can you describe it? I hesitated. My throat tightened. Do I tell them? I gripped the phone tighter, pulse hammering. It wasn't normal. It looked like a deer, but it was wrong. It didn't have a head and there was... I stopped myself. The truth sounded insane, even in my own ears. It ran my truck off the road. I said instead. It might still be out there. There was another pause, just a little too long. Then the operator's voice returned, softer this time. Understood. Just stay put, sir. Emergency services are en route. But in the silence that followed, something else filled the space. A sound, high-pitched and angry. A loud screech permeated the forest that my truck was now stuck in. It was so loud that the operator on the other side of the line could hear it too. "Sir, what was that?" I could barely process the question. My breath hitched as I clutched my phone tighter, my fingers slick with sweat and blood. "It's..." My voice caught in my throat. My body refused to move, every instinct screaming at me to stay still. "It's here." The line went quiet, but I could hear the tension in the operator's breathing. "Sir, do you have a weapon?" I swallowed hard, glancing around the wreckage of my cab. My pocket knife, too small to do anything useful, was in my glove compartment, but my hands were shaking so badly I wasn't sure if I could even hold it. My truck was dead. My body was battered, and I was stranded alone in the dark with that thing. Then I heard more noise. The underbrush rustled, twigs snapped, the shadows shifted between the trees. My pulse jackhammered against my ribs. I struggled to move, pushing against the crushed door, but my body screamed in protest. Too slow, too weak. From the darkness slowly limped forward a shape, tall, gaunt, watching. Just beyond the reach of my truck's flickering headlights, something stood at the tree line. Its frame was impossibly thin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. The skin was a sickly, corpse-like gray, stretched too tight over sharp bones. But it was the eyes that made my stomach drop. Two hollow, cavernous pits, black as the void, staring straight at me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The operator's voice crackled through the line, barely a whisper over the static. "Sir, are you still there?" Her words acted like a trigger for the beast. It got down on its hands and started racing its way towards the truck, screeching at the same time. I screamed in terror as I used every ounce of strength to reach for my glove box. I forced it open with shaky hands. I managed to grab and flip open the knife. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. Looking back at the creature, all I saw was a blur of sickly gray limbs, its body contorting unnaturally as it closed the distance in a fraction of a second. Slam. The truck shuddered violently as the creature slammed its body against the side, metal groaning under the impact. A long skeletal arm lunged through the shattered window, clawed fingers grasping blindly for me. Adrenaline flooded my veins. With a raw, desperate burst of strength, I lunged, gripping my knife tight, and drove the blade deep into its gangly arm. A piercing shriek tore from its throat. A sound so unnatural it made my skull feel like it was splitting. But it didn't stop. It clawed at me and I fought back, both of us thrashing and tearing at each other like wild animals. Eventually the beast had enough and it pulled its arm back through the car window and started to sprint away back into the night. Tears lined my cheeks as I started to fade back into unconsciousness. The last thing I heard was some unintelligible words from the operator. I woke to blinding light. A harsh, sterile glow burned through my eyelids, pulling me from the depths of unconsciousness. The sharp tang of antiseptic filled my nostrils, mixed with the steady beep, beep, beep of machines. I was alive. Dazed, I turned my head, my gaze adjusting to the unfamiliar white walls of a hospital room. Tubes ran from my arms and an IV drip hung beside me. I could barely think past the fog in my skull. Then I tried to move. A sharp, stabbing ache bloomed in my ribs, but something felt off. I couldn't feel anything below my chest. My breath hitched. I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the thin hospital blanket, but I didn't have the heart to look. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, my mind numb, my body wrecked. But despite the pain, despite the fear creeping up my throat, I was grateful to be alive. Days passed in a blur of medication, whispered conversations, and restless sleep. Doctors came and went, their voices distant as they discussed my injuries. A shattered rib cage, deep lacerations, nerve damage. The prognosis wasn't great, but I was lucky to be alive. My truck was totaled. Emergency responders had found me unconscious, bleeding out in the wreckage. The official report called it a wild animal attack. They assumed a bear or some rabid predator had forced me off the road. I asked about the severed leg that had been stuck between the truck and the tree, but I was told nothing of that sort was found, so I didn't argue. What else could I say? That I'd been hunted by something inhuman? That I'd watched it crawl out of a headless deer's chest and tear through my truck like paper? They'd think I was insane. So I kept my mouth shut. Even as I lay there recovering, the memories didn't fade. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That sickly gray skin, those hollow black eyes, the screech that made my skull rattle. My dreams were filled with flickering headlights and the endless clack of hooves on wet pavement. A little over a month later, I was discharged. The doctors said my mobility would take time to return, but I was already regaining some feeling in my lower body. The nerve damage hadn't been as bad as they feared. With therapy, I'd walk again. That was the first bit of good news I had in a long time. My best friend David picked me up from the hospital. He helped me into the passenger seat of his truck, eyeing my injuries with a grimace. "Jesus, man," he muttered, shaking his head. "You really got torn up. They said a bear did this?" I hesitated. My mouth felt dry. "Something like that." David didn't push. He just nodded, put the truck in gear, and drove. The ride home was quiet. The rain drizzled against the windshield, the wipers dragging across the glass in slow, rhythmic swipes. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. The place was exactly how I left it, small, tucked away on the edge of town, surrounded by miles of thick forest. The kind of place where neighbors were a 10-minute drive away, and the nights were silent besides the infrequent sound of the wildlife. David helped me inside, made sure I had everything I needed, then left me to rest. I collapsed onto my bed, my body screaming for a relief. I tried to fall asleep, but I couldn't. I thought it was just my paranoia. My nerves were still shot, and my brain was still wired from everything that had happened. Then I heard it. A sound, faint and carrying through the trees. It was a high-pitched, shrill screech. Every muscle in my body went rigid. A sharp pulse of fear crashed through me, but this time, I wasn't trapped in a wrecked truck. This time I was ready. I reached beside my bed, fingers wrapping around the cold steel of my shotgun. If that thing had followed me here, it wouldn't leave alive. I saw a therapist for 8 years. Let's call him Dr. P. He came highly recommended. People said he was sharp, analytical, didn't sugarcoat things. That sounded like exactly what I needed. At first, I admired him. He had a way of making me feel like he understood me completely, like he could see through my thoughts better than I could myself. His approach was firm, sometimes dismissive, but he framed it as challenging my thinking. I figured he knew what he was doing. But as the years went on, something felt off. It wasn't any one thing, it was little moments. Times when I left his office feeling more uncertain, more dependent on his approval than when I walked in. He questioned my memories often. If I recalled something a certain way, he would shake his head and say, "That's not how it happened." He had this way of planting doubt, making me wonder if my own thoughts were unreliable. He contradicted me about things I was sure of, delayed diagnosis, shifting explanations, making me feel like I was misinterpreting my own experiences. And then there was the phone call. I had been venting about my stress, how I always felt on edge, like I was waiting for something bad to happen. I told him I'd been checking my phone constantly, expecting bad news even when there was no reason to. He gave me a strange look, then he smiled. "Funny you say that," he said, "because you missed a call earlier." I froze. I hadn't told him that. I pulled out my phone instinctively, heart pounding. There was a missed call, unknown number, no notification, just sitting there in my call log. I hadn't heard it ring. I looked back up at him. He just watched me, smiling slightly. I stammered something about spam calls, but my skin was crawling. How did he know? "Just something to think about," he said. That night, I woke up to my phone ringing, no caller ID. I answered without thinking. Silence. Then, in a voice I swear was his, "You need to learn to sit with discomfort." The line clicked dead. I didn't sleep after that. I tried to tell myself I had imagined it, a stress-induced hallucination. Maybe I had dreamed the whole thing. But then I started noticing other things. Small details that shifted, conversations we'd had that he remembered differently, but only in ways that made me question myself. Once I swore I had told him about a dream I'd had, but when I brought it up later, he smirked and said, "You never told me that." Another time, I referenced a childhood memory he had once dismissed as distorted. He leaned forward and said, "But what if it was real?" It was like he was rewriting my past. I started recording our sessions, not for legal reasons, just for my sanity. I needed to hear what was real, but when I played them back, I swear some things were missing. Moments where I knew I had reacted, long silences instead, or strange audio glitches, like something was cutting parts out, and then something that made my blood run cold. One night while reviewing a recording, I heard myself speaking, except I didn't remember saying those words. A full minute of audio where I calmly said, "I trust you. You're the only one who understands me." I repeated it several times. I never said that. I would never say that. I left therapy soon after, but it didn't end there. When I told him I was taking a break, his whole demeanor changed. He wasn't cold anymore. He smiled, acted friendly. Too friendly. "Oh, of course," he said. "Just remember, I don't provide therapy notes. But if your new psychologist needs anything, they can always call me." That night, I unplugged my Alexa, turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear from him ever again, but thinking about him was impossible to stop because he knew too much. Not just about my traumas, my childhood, my fears. He knew my patterns. He knew the way I second-guess myself, the way I latch on to certain thoughts, the way I look for meaning in things that shouldn't mean anything. And now, as I sit here typing this, I wonder, did he know exactly what he was doing? Did he know that even after I left, his words would stick in my brain like a splinter, that I'd replay them over and over, long after I stopped seeing him? Did he know he'd live rent-free in my head long after I stopped paying him? Because I think he did. And just now, as I wrote that last sentence, my phone lit up. No notification, no ringtone, just a missed call. Unknown number. I think he's still watching. And this time, I'm afraid to answer. No one was surprised when Eddie's, a small, greasy burger joint that had only opened a year prior in my town, was said to be closing down permanently within a couple of days. In the weeks leading up to the announcement, a multitude of allegations were sent flying in the direction of its owner, Eddie, ranging from claims of embezzling to accusations of unfaithfulness, which left him divorced. It was only a matter of time before Eddie pulled the plug. I thought it a shame, though. Despite my less than favorable opinions of the guy, the burgers in which he served were the best in town. So, for old time's sake, I decided to pay the joint one last visit before its passing. The door chime rang a familiar ding as I entered into the barren burger place. I could hear the hissing of grills from far in the back as I approached the counter. I stood there in uncomfortable silence for a few seconds, before I heard a familiar, hoarse voice call to me from out of view. "Who's there?" Eddie croaked out in a low-pitched tone, his voice sounding strained and choked as if he had just been sobbing. A customer. Sorry. Is it not open today?" I asked, fully prepared to turn myself around and walk back out, before Eddie shuffled into view. He had seen better days. Eye bags sagged his face down, and an unkempt stubble was sprinkled across his jawline. He wore a stained apron, with a sweaty wife-beater underneath. It was clear he had been crying, as his eyes were red, and he was shoveling dribbling mucus off his face with a gloved hand. He cleared his throat before speaking. Yeah, it's open. What can I get you?" I was hesitant in responding. In my mind, I was contemplating whether to just call it a day and apologize for bothering him, or to let my gluttony get the best of me. I soon made up my mind. "Yeah, can I get a chicken filet burger and a side of crinkled fries? Oh, and a drink of Pepsi, too." Eddie didn't appear to fully register my order at first, as it seemed he was zoning out while staring off into the distance. From the kitchen, I began to hear faint shuffling and a muffled voice intertwined with the hissing of what I presumed was the cooker. Eddie seemed to take notice and thus responded abruptly. "Okay, got it. Just take a seat and I'll be right there with your order. And don't mind the noises. Those are just the moving guys, packing up all my furniture," he told me with a shaky tone. His eyes locked on me while he cracked a nervous smile. At the time, I decided to give the guy a pass for his odd behavior. I mean, his entire life was basically over. Who can blame him for being slightly unstable? Eddie returned to the kitchen as I found a seat and began to scroll mindlessly on my phone for the next 5 minutes. Throughout those 5 minutes, I could hear Eddie in the back whispering and slamming objects. I assumed he was assisting the moving guys and tuned it out. That's when my nose picked up on a smell, rotten and sulfurous. It attacked my nostrils and made my eyes water from how bad it smelt. I thought it was the scent of rotten meat or out-of-date vegetables that had drifted its way from the back, but I soon found that the smell was doing more than just revolting me. It was making my head dizzy and my vision steadily blurry. At that point, I just couldn't champion through it any longer, as whatever was in the air was choking my lungs and making my throat begin to burn. I pushed my chair back with a screech and began stumbling my way to the door, when I heard Eddie begin shouting. "Here it comes! This is all your fault!" he wailed, his voice undeniably distraught and haggard. I was far too desperate for air to acknowledge his words in that moment, as I sprung the door open and exited onto the sidewalk into the cold December air. It didn't remain cold, however, as a wave of heat from behind blasted me off my feet and into the street. My head collided with the icy tarmac as everything suddenly went black. My memory from that point remains hazy, but from what I can remember, red and orange bled into the darkness as I slowly came to, flat on my back surrounded by passerbyers, ears ringing. I could see Eddie's was no more, as a violent inferno laid claim to the establishment. Windows shattered as its foundation shook. The front room was in complete ruin, flames bellowing from where I once sat, before I again fell unconscious. Upon walking in the hospital and being questioned by the police, I learned what had happened. A murder-suicide. Eddie had bought canisters of hydrogen sulfide and was in the process of filling the building with it, when I just happened to enter. The hissing I heard was not that of the cooker or fryer. Hell, there wasn't even any cooking appliances in the kitchen to make such noises as, unbeknownst to me, the kitchen had been stripped clean a day prior. Instead, what I heard was the sound of gas leaking. Thankfully, by the time Eddie had begun to flick alive a lighter, I had already taken one step out of the door, foiling his attempt at taking me with him by a hair as he ignited the flammable gas. But it remains a murder-suicide, as despite my survival, me and Eddie weren't the only ones in there at the time. A woman was there too, Eddie's mistress, as I found out. She had been invited over and had been restrained and gagged by him by the time I entered. The muffled noises I had heard had been hers as she struggled to escape from her bindings, to which she could not, and thus she perished alongside Eddie. It's been a year since then, and as funny as it may sound, I do now hold a slight irrational fear of fast food restaurants. I mean, I was only a second away from being immolated, and I didn't even know it. So now, whenever I'm in a McDonald's or any fast food joint at that, I always make sure that the hissing I hear from the kitchen are just that of the grills and fryers, and not that of the final act of a man on the end of his line. Hey guys, I am absolutely freaking out right now and I have no clue what to do. I'm 15, okay? Just a normal kid, or at least I was until literally yesterday. Everything has gone completely to crap in the last 24 hours, and I mean everything. Yesterday was just a normal, boring Wednesday. School, homework, the usual Mountain Dew and bad gaming sessions until 2 a.m. But then I woke up this morning to this blaring emergency alert on our TV. It was this grainy broadcast about some disease that's spreading like wildfire. Something about it being super contagious, and the main symptoms being like extreme aggression and paranoia. And the news dude looked like he was fighting to keep it together. My dad, being the conspiracy theorist that he is, scoffed and immediately shut off the TV, saying it was all government propaganda or something. But I had this sinking feeling in my gut, like something was seriously wrong. At school, it was like flipping a switch. Almost everyone started acting crazy, like they wouldn't stop staring at me. I'm not exactly the most popular or good-looking kid, so it was super unsettling. Even Joseph, who usually greets me with a solid punch to the arm and some playful insults, just gave me this weird, distant side-eye and completely ignored me. It was like he was afraid of me. I accidentally dozed off for like 5 minutes in history class. Miss Davis' lectures could knock out a horse, and when I woke up, the entire classroom was chaos. Everyone was screaming and pointing at me. Then they started hitting me, like full-on fists flying, everyone attacking me, hitting. Even Miss Davis joined in, swinging her purse like a weapon. I tried to defend myself, I swear I did, but it was like a mob mentality. I remember punching Miss Davis in the face and seeing blood, and then everything went black. I woke up in the school bathroom, lying on the cold tile floor with blood all over my face. I think I had a concussion or something because my head was pounding and everything was blurry. I tried to cry because honestly I was terrified and overwhelmed, but no tears would come. I went home hoping for some kind of comfort, even though the whole day was a warning sign. Big mistake. I walked through the front door and my mom was standing in the kitchen with this vacant look in her eyes, clutching a kitchen knife. She told me to stay away from her, her voice all raspy and weird. I just wanted a hug, you know? A little reassurance after the literal hell I had just been through. But she raised the knife at me. She actually tried to stab me. I managed to dodge the first swipe, but she caught me in the shoulder with the second. I didn't even feel it at first. I was so shocked. But then this wave of intense rage washed over me, like I was watching myself from outside my body. I shoved her away from me with more force than I thought I possessed and ran. Now I'm hiding in this abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. It's all dusty and creepy, but it's the only place I could think of to go. I can hear sirens in the distance, and I saw at least half a dozen cop cars patrolling the main road. The whole town is on lockdown, and everyone is after me. I have a feeling they're all infected. They're acting exactly like the TV said. Aggressive, paranoid, and completely out of their minds. I managed to leech onto the Wi-Fi signal from a nearby store so I could post this. If anyone who isn't infected is reading this, please, for the love of God, help me. I am so scared and confused. I have a splitting headache, a throbbing shoulder, and this overwhelming feeling of anger bubbling inside me. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want this to stop. Edit. Wait. Oh God, no. I just caught my reflection in a broken window. My eyes are completely bloodshot, and there's this grotesque rash spreading across my neck. It's like the veins are bulging and turning black. And I can't remember what happened after I pushed my mom. I can't remember the run here. There's just blank spots. I'm the infected one, aren't I? Everyone was trying to stop me. I am the danger. What have I done? What am I going to do? Oh God, please, someone, anyone help me before I hurt anyone else. I don't want to be this monster. I really don't. Carl slammed the door open and rushed outside, taking deep breaths before I could turn off the car. Geez, Carl, is there anything that doesn't make you sick? Shut up, Tom. I told you I would get car sickness. Maybe you should have eaten less for lunch. Come on, Tom. Those switchbacks weren't easy to deal with. If I hadn't been driving, I would feel dizzy as well. Took off my seatbelt and got out of the driver's seat. You guys sure you don't want to go back and spend the holiday at home? We are in the wild here, light years away from civilization, said Tom with a smug expression as he got out of the car. Sure, Tom. I bet our Stone Age ancestors lived in a cabin just like the one we rented. Carl opened the trunk and tossed Tom his backpack. Alright, but you get what I mean. We're lucky if we get running water inside. Tom was checking his phone. I barely have any reception. Carl grabbed his bag and closed the trunk. It's not off-grid. Don't be silly. The keys should be under the doormat. Can you check, Ethan? His face was still pale from the car sickness. The mountain air filled our nostrils as the forest extended far beyond our eyes could see. A cozy-looking cabin sat in a clearing where the dirt road ended. We initially opted for a camping trip for our sophomore spring break, but our parents, especially Carl's, were very worried about the possible dangers, so we settled for a cabin instead. I flipped the doormat and found a bear paw keyring from underneath. There is no spare. I'll keep them if you guys don't mind. Good idea. We can agree Tom isn't reliable, Carl said with a mocking smile. Tom rolled his eyes. As I opened the door, he rushed inside and went for the kitchen. The cabin had 2 floors, a living room and the kitchen downstairs, and a bedroom and bathroom upstairs. Holy, the fridge is stacked, echoed Tom from the kitchen. There is even a pack of beers. We joined Tom in the kitchen as he was examining the fridge. Shouldn't the owner be aware that we're underage? A hissing sound followed as Tom cracked open a cold one. Who cares, Ethan? It's just a few beers. He took a long sip and handed the can to Carl, who reluctantly also took a sip. I sighed and waited for Carl to take a sip myself. Let's unpack our bags upstairs, then let's see what to eat for dinner. The following night wasn't particularly eventful. We watched one of the Blu-ray movies we found, then stayed up late on the porch, chatting and drinking. Right before waking up, I dreamed of Carl calling my name, but as I opened my eyes, the only noise to greet me was the bedroom window being slammed repeatedly by the wind. I realized I was still wearing the same clothes as when we arrived. No one else was in the bathroom. I closed the window as the wind's howling echoed outside, and after a quick bathroom trip, I made my way downstairs. Good morning, Ethan. What was that noise? Tom was lying on the couch. He didn't look like he had been awake for long either. There's a strong wind raging outside. It was slamming the bedroom window. No, I mean earlier. Did you hear some kind of howling? He made his way to the kitchen. I shook my head. No, must have been the wind. Whatever. Tom filled the glass with water. Just wake Carl and tell him to come down for breakfast. I gave him a puzzled look. Wait, what? I thought Carl was here already. Tom froze, staring at the water in his glass. He's not here. Where the hell could he have gone? His jacket and backpack are still there. I stepped outside on the porch. There was no sign of Carl outside, and our car was still parked. He's not outside either. I'll call him. A noise resonated from the kitchen. I went over the counter and examined the source of the ringtone. It's his phone. Do you remember the last time you saw him? Moments of silence followed as we tried to think about the events of last night. We watched that movie, then stayed on the porch until, 2 a.m. Then we went to bed. I don't remember seeing Carl leaving. Yeah, me neither. By the way, why were you sleeping on the couch? Because you and Carl were snoring like crazy at some point, but I would have noticed if he ran outside in the middle of the night. Chances are he sleepwalked outside and got lost. We better go look for him. Tom nodded. Yeah, he can't have gone too far. We started looking for Carl in the nearby woods. Around 10 minutes later, Tom grabbed my arm. Look, under that tree. A flash of blue caught my sight as I strained my eyes. That must be him. Next to a large old tree, someone was slumped next to the trunk. I recognized the blue sweater Carl was wearing. Carl, are you alright? He was lying curled up on the ground, cowering his face, as if he were trying to hide in the burrow at the base of the tree. Carl didn't seem to acknowledge our presence. Carl, it's us. Are you okay? I grabbed his shoulder and shook him, causing him to lower his hands. His face was marked with signs of tears, and his eyes were filled with terror. Carl pushed himself up against the trunk. Ethan, where is he? He was panting heavily. His clothes were dirty with mud and foliage, but there weren't any signs of blood or injuries. It's just me and Tom. Carl, are you hurt? No, you don't understand. He was there. You have to go away. Carl, you're not making any sense. Who is there? Did someone attack you? He looked around, his eyes scouting the surroundings to search for something. No, he called me last night and I had to follow him. Who are you talking about? The man with the skull. He lives nearby. I gave Tom a puzzled look. He was just as creeped out as I was. You don't seem injured. Let's go back to the cabin first. Then you'll tell us everything. A noise like a distorted, low-pitched howling could be heard in the distance. Carl screamed, closing his eyes. It's him. Run away. Don't look into his eyes. Calm down, Carl. It's just a moose. We're in a forest, remember? Ethan, help me get him back up. We helped Carl stand up. His legs were still trembling. Come on, Carl. We're not far from the cabin. I put Carl's arms around his neck and helped him walk. We made our way back to the cabin with Carl occasionally stuttering nonsense and frantically looking over his shoulder. We made him lay on the bed and gave him some water. Carl, can we talk now? Do you remember what happened? Carl took a sip of water and cleared his throat. Last night, he called my name while I was sleeping. Who? Did you see his face? Tom was looking outside the bedroom window. Carl shook his head. He wears a horned animal skull, a moose, I think. He told me to follow him or he would take you two instead. And you went outside to follow him? I'm sorry, guys. His voice is very convincing. I don't think he's a person like us. He made me look into his eyes. They weren't human eyes. That was when I ran away. I can't forget those eyes anymore. Are you really sure that didn't happen in a nightmare? Yes, I wasn't dreaming. He slammed his fist on the nightstand, spilling some of the water into the glass. We have to leave before he comes back. Carl, maybe you should get some rest upstairs. You look really tired. We can talk again later? We can't wait here anymore. We have to go now. Carl, we can't just... The noise could be heard again. This time it sounded more like a bark than a howling, and it was much closer. He's here. We don't have time. Carl, it's just an animal. Calm down. Right, Tom? Tom was looking out the window. As he turned around, his face had become pale. Ethan, what is that? He pointed at a distant tree. I went to the window and looked closely. A moose skull could be seen next to a tree in the distance. After squinting, I could see the skull belonged to what seemed an absurdly tall human figure. Me and Tom looked at each other without speaking a word. The realization of what we believed was just a nightmare crept up on us, and my heart started pounding. I was sweating. Ethan, maybe Carl is right. We have to go. I'll get the backpacks. I told you there's no time. Carl had gotten up from the bed. Ethan, get the keys. I didn't even have time to process what happened before I heard the noise again coming from downstairs. I froze as heavy footsteps resonated from the ground floor. What the... Tom brandished the lamp from the nightstand. We moved as far back as we could from the stairs, as the footsteps grew closer. Don't look into his eyes. I turned my attention to Carl, who tried to hide under the bed. Then I heard Tom scream and the sound of the lamp dropping on the floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something else was in the room. As I turned around, an inhumanly tall figure was standing in front of me. It was wearing a moose skull, but I couldn't see its face, let alone the eyes, and the rest of its body was draped in a black fur coat. The eye holes in the skull were nothing but pitch black as it stared at me, motionless, hunched forward to not touching the ceiling. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. I tried to move, but every muscle in my body was frozen. Then my vision faded and I passed out a few seconds later. I was lying on the bedroom floor when I regained my senses. Tom, what happened? He was standing there, like frozen in place. There was no one else in the bedroom. I put a hand on his shoulder. Tom, where's Carl? He had a blank expression on his face and was staring at the wall, hypnotized. Tom, wake up. I shook him violently. Where is... He grabbed my hand without looking at me, with no change in his expression. We'll be going. He is with us. You can leave now. His voice was a whisper. Tom, what are you... I suddenly got pushed to the wall, hurting my head in the process. As I reopened my eyes, I was alone. I bolted downstairs, but he was gone. I checked outside while calling 911, but nobody was there either. The police told me to come to the station as they couldn't send anyone up there for a while. Carl and Tom were filed as missing persons. I went home as they opened my investigation, but no traces have been found so far, after 1 month. What's crazy is that the police told us not to expect much, since many people go missing while camping in this area. The local media barely talked about us, and dismissed it as drunk teenagers getting lost in the woods. I had issues sleeping at night after what happened. I often expect to wake up and see that skull staring at me. I thought they were just nightmares, until this morning. I was still half asleep when I heard Tom and Carl calling my name. I woke up, but I was alone, and the windows in my room were open. I was sure I closed them last night. Working at a fast food restaurant was never my dream job. I recently divorced my wife. Things were bitter, and unfortunately, I had been forced to hand over 75% of my assets by the order of a judge. My now ex-wife used our savings account to hire an expensive lawyer who managed to direct all our problems at myself. It was mostly bull, but what was I to do? I argued the case and how she used our money to buy herself a lawyer. But if you know anything about divorce courts, they're usually hell. So I moved my few remaining items out of the house and went to find a new place to live. I eventually found a mediocre apartment complex and settled down there. The next few weeks were terrible. I couldn't focus and was eventually fired from my desk job due to inefficient production. My apartment was in a bad spot of town, but was cheap enough for me to maintain my rent payments for a few months. Finding a job was, as you'd expect, difficult for someone who was fired. I went through several interviews, but was always left with the same, "We found a candidate that better fit our needs, blah blah blah." I hated that so much. They didn't give a crap about me or anyone else they rejected. After scrounging the web for weeks, I finally surrendered myself to lower-level jobs. I found a notice that the fast food restaurant Checkers was hiring night staff. I decided to apply, as it gave me more time during the day to search for another 9-to-5 job. Long story short, the interview went well and I got the job. I was introduced to the night crew and they trained me quickly. It was an easy enough job. Practically no one ever came in. Maintaining the grill and helping the crew clean at the end of each shift was decent enough. However, one night things were different. It was a cool night in March 2023. I arrived early to find that there was a mad rush of people. We usually had like 10 to 15 people each night, but there must have been at least 25 people at the restaurant. I hurried to the back where I saw 3 of my coworkers frantically getting things together. The cashier was named Tyler and looked super relieved to see me. He told me there was this sudden influx of customers and only 3 workers. It wasn't working out well and people were starting to get impatient. Jasmine was the second worker, who helped get shakes and fries prepared. She smiled and waved to me. Waving back, I turned then to Joe, my boss, who was flipping burgers on the grill. He looked at me and grumbled, "Well, come on, we ain't got all day. Get on the grill." I quickly adjusted my name tag and got to work. Joe went back to his office as I took over on the grill. Things were stressful and my shift had just begun. It was almost like the whole town was getting food at once. Thankfully, the 3 of us made a good team and were able to get through the mad rush in about 15 minutes. I sighed in relief and smiled at my coworkers when Joe emerged from his office. "Tyler, Albert, my office now." "Yeah, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Albert, and I'm 32 years old." "That's good enough." Anyway, in his office, Joe instructed us that we would be doing some side projects that night when it was quiet. He said he'd like us to start searching the inside and outside of the restaurant for any damage that should be reported to the higher-ups. Then he wants us to refill everything in the dining room, napkins, condiments, etc. And then finally he said we needed to get an inventory together of our food. Tyler and I nodded and went back to the front. We rolled our eyes at each other and began planning. We checked all around the inside of the restaurant and everything looked good. We then filled the napkin dispensers, salt and pepper shakers, ketchup bottles, etc. Then we cleaned off the tables the best we could. By the time we finished all of that, it was about 2:15 a.m. I was due for my break in the next hour, so I decided to spend some time getting inventory together in the fridge. Then suddenly remembered that we didn't check the outside of the restaurant for damage. So he went outside and began investigating. I began at the beginning of the fridge and worked my way to the back. I knew we had to do the freezer still, so I tried to prepare myself for the immense cold that I thought would follow soon. Going through each box, I had most of the numbers written down. Food, condiments, etc. I went towards the last set of boxes in the corner when something caught my eye. I thought I saw a faint purple glow coming from behind the boxes. Moving them aside, I noticed there was a chunk of wall that looked damaged. However, before I could write a note for Joe, I paused. The chunk, which was probably about 3 feet wide, looked like it was rippling. I shook my head and looked back. The wall moved again. I thought I was starting to get very tired and was hallucinating. I got on my knees and reached forward towards the chunk. When my hands contacted the wall, I was immediately thrusted forward hard and everything went dark. I woke up on the floor of the fridge. My head was aching. I slowly sat up and looked around. The boxes in front of me were still cleanly organized. I turned back to the wall and saw the damaged chunk was still there, but the ripple and purple glow weren't. I sighed, thinking I really must have been hallucinating. I slowly got to my feet and headed out of the fridge. I saw Tyler and Joe talking in the middle of the dining room. Approaching them, they turned to me. "Oh, thank heavens. There you are," Joe said. "Where in the world were you? We've been looking for 10 minutes. "I was getting inventory taken care of in the fridge," I mumbled. Looks to me like you tried to get some shut-eye too, Al," Joe said, raising an eyebrow. You see, I don't know. I must have knocked my head on something and blacked out," I said, rubbing my forehead. "Oh," Joe said, frowning. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I think so." "We'll go get some water and take a break. Don't worry, Tyler will finish inventory," Joe said with a smile on his face. "Yeah, don't worry about it, man. I've got this," Tyler said, patting my shoulder and smiling. "Thanks, guys," I said. I got water and sat down, wiped my eyes, and took deep breaths. A bit later, I began to feel better, so I got up and went back to the freezer, where Tyler was counting. He said he was almost finished in the freezer, so I was good to go relax in the kitchen. I obliged and found Jasmine. She saw me and asked, "Hey, you doing all right?" "Yes, much better, thank you," I replied with a smile. I was used to Tyler and Jasmine being nice to me, but Joe smiling at me was a first. I thought that maybe he was just relieved I was okay, but it unsettled me. For the rest of my shift, the restaurant stayed quiet. There were a few orders, but I must have been in the zone because getting the burgers made felt so much easier than before. Once the restaurant closed at 4 a.m., Joe called a brief meeting with us and gave us all pats on the shoulder for a great shift. He said we could go home early. The morning crew could finish cleaning everything. We thanked him and all went our separate ways. Once I got to my car, I took a few moments to try and understand what happened in that fridge. In the car, I looked in the mirror and saw I had a big bruise on my forehead. Just my luck. Before driving, I checked myself for a concussion, which I hadn't considered before. A part of me was concerned that my mental state wasn't quite right, since things felt like they went too well at the end of my shift. But I seemed fine. I took deep breaths and slowly began the drive home. The drive went noticeably better than usual. The worst part of town usually had scattered debris, drug dealers in the alleys, and potholes. That time, though, things were basically spotless, like the community had finally gotten its stuff together. Getting back to my apartment building, I wasn't met with the same aura as before. I know it sounds strange, but I've run into neighbors before who were jerks, and the halls sometimes reeked of weed. Nothing this time. Once I was inside my apartment, I was met with the same familiar sight from before, which helped ease my mind a bit. I quickly ate, showered, and went to bed. I didn't look further into anything that night. I just needed sleep. I woke up around 2 p.m. like normal. I felt clear in the head again. Going to the bathroom, I checked the mirror and saw my bruise was already starting to fade. Like before, my pupils were fine, and my balance was normal. I avoided serious injury and was relieved. I spent more time applying for jobs online. Wouldn't you believe it? But that same day, I received calls from companies asking for interviews. I was ecstatic. This had never happened in all the years I had been applying for jobs. It put me in such a good mood for work that night. On the way to Checkers, I once again noticed the route was much more peaceful than it had been before. The roads were clean, and a group of guys noticed me and waved with big smiles. I was confused, but returned a smile and waved too. It felt almost fantastic. I had dealt with so many jerks on the road that the simple gesture made me feel overjoyed. At Checkers, I was fortunate to see that there were only a couple customers scattered around the place. Tyler and Jasmine were finishing up the 2 orders when I went back into the kitchen. They both greeted me. I clocked in and immediately got to work prepping patties for future orders. I realized that there weren't any customers in line at the time, and things were just peaceful. The place looked cleaner than usual too. I asked my coworkers if they cleaned the room recently. No, we've just been lucky today," Tyler said with a grin. Moments later, Joe came out of his office and approached the counter. "Hey Al, since the place is calm, I have a job for you. We've had some issues with the drive-through speaker. Could you go outside and see if you can figure out what the problem is? We have a small breaker behind the menu that you can check. I hadn't gotten a chance to check it out yet." I told him that I wasn't too familiar with that type of work, but he assured me that I only needed to see if anything seemed damaged or unplugged. I made my way outside. I went behind the drive-through menu and found the panel I needed. Opening it, I was met with dozens of wires, all with different colors and ports. I was baffled but started examining. I was probably out there for half an hour. I went through all the ports, nothing was unplugged. I went through the wires, all of them were good. As I closed the breaker door, I heard something strange. It sounded like a gurgle. I approached the other side of the drive-through board and noticed the speaker. The first sound I heard from the speaker all shift, and it was that. I backed up and listened around to make sure it wasn't something else. Sure enough, it was the speaker. I found myself walking slowly towards it. When I was close enough, I then began hearing something else. It almost sounded like a whisper. "I'm ready, I'm ready." It was barely audible, but I picked it up. "I'm ready, I'm ready." I began to mouth the phrase, trying to figure out what it meant. Was one of my coworkers playing a prank on me? No, that couldn't be. How would they know if the speaker was working? Suddenly, without warning, the speaker hissed out a loud, "I'm ready," causing me to fall on my butt. The speaker then stopped. Without any hesitation, I got up and ran back into the restaurant. I slammed through the front doors and made my way to the counter. Tyler and Jasmine's eyes widened as they asked if I was okay. I panted, hands on my knees, before looking up. "Yeah, nice prank, guys. You got me good," as Joe came out of his office. Tyler and Jasmine looked at each other confused. "What prank?" Jasmine said. "The one with the speaker outside, the hissing and gurgling sounds," I claimed. Jasmine and Tyler had blank looks on their faces. "Neither of us did anything, Al," Jasmine said. "What's going on here?" asked Joe. I told him about what happened outside at the speaker. Joe then asked me to go through what I had done. After doing so, he asked if I could show him outside what exactly happened. I did, but of course nothing happened that time. Joe shrugged it off, and that was about all we mentioned about it for the rest of the shift. One good thing about this Checkers was that we had a period before the end of our shift where customers rarely came through, so we could all take short breaks. The break that day was relaxing. It definitely took my mind off that speaker. The rest of my shift went by smoothly. Joe even said we could take burgers home for us if we wanted. On him. The next day I did my usual routine. I was greeted with another phone call from an employer wishing to schedule an interview, which made me happy again. When it was time to get to Checkers, I took the bus to shake things up. On the way, it was peaceful and quiet like the day before, but there was one extra thing that caught my attention. There is this alleyway that's particularly known for its violence and drug dealing. What I saw in there was a strange red substance next to a dumpster. It didn't look like blood, but I couldn't figure out what it was. Things seemed to be getting stranger following my accident in the freezer. I started to wonder if I did have a concussion after all. I told myself I'd get checked out by a doctor in the morning. At work, things were normal until our break. Joe said we could take the whole hour. Tyler and Jasmine asked if I wanted to go to an all-night ethnic cafe down the street. I was delighted, as I was in the mood to try a new place. It was a very nice night. I almost forgot how great it was just relaxing at night with friends, without worrying about work or gangs. We got to the restaurant. It looked nice inside, and there were quite a few people there considering the time. Our hostess greeted us with a huge smile and showed us to our seats. Tyler said he's been there several times and loved it. He just told me to keep an open mind. Our waitress welcomed us with a smile and our menus. Tyler was certainly right, as none of the names made any sense. I ended up getting what I was told was a stew. Tyler and Jasmine said they really enjoyed working with me and wanted to show their appreciation with a gift. They then presented me with a blue sweater that Tyler had somehow kept hidden. I was amazed and thanked them. After some more lighthearted conversations, the waitress came back with our food. My mood dropped immediately. The stew was a brown mixture of what looked like slimy meat and mushy rice. Tyler and Jasmine's dishes also looked awful. Tyler got a sandwich with a sickly green bread and greasy red meat. Jasmine got a salad with brown lettuce and a big blob of a black, shiny liquid in the middle. I looked to both of them uncertain. Tyler laughed and reassured me this was normal. I shakily grabbed my spoon and scooped up a bit of the stew. The smell was rancid, but with a deep breath I quickly ate it. It wasn't as bad as it looked, but it was sour. I didn't want to be rude though, so I kept eating. Tyler and Jasmine both ate normally and looked like they were really enjoying their food. I shuddered as I kept eating more and more of that brown stuff. After Tyler reached the middle of the sandwich, I heard a sickly popping noise. The meat popped and a puddle of red goo dripped onto his plate. I nearly barfed but kept it down. Tyler laughed and said, "Oops, I forgot about that part." After an agonizing meal, we left and headed back to the restaurant. I felt like crap, but managed to eat the whole bowl. On the way back, I had to duck into an alleyway and retch. Tyler rested a hand on my shoulder and said, well, I guess that place isn't for everyone. You good, Al?" Nodding, he helped me back to the street and to the restaurant. Once we were back on, Joe had me start cleaning the tables. He noticed I looked bad and knew keeping me away from food would probably be a smart move. As I approached the final hour of my shift, I was finally feeling better. I finished cleaning and refilling condiments in the dining room. That's when I looked up and noticed no one was manning the counter. I called out for my coworkers but got no response. I went behind the counter. No one was there, but the grill was still on. A single burger was getting overcooked, so I took it off and chucked it. I then saw a bit of light coming out of Joe's office. I began slowly walking towards the door when I heard a whispering sound coming from the other side. I crept over as much as I could and began listening. Joe, Tyler, and Jasmine were in there having a discussion. "I told you we don't need to rush this. We have him. We must be patient. Why the hell did you take him to that restaurant?" "I wanted to earn his trust more, and I was hungry." "Oh yeah, that must have worked out well, huh? Anyway, trust me, we won't be waiting much longer. Once the process is complete, we will be good until the next one comes along." I wish the one knew how hungry we truly are. I'm getting sick of this slop. "By all means, go tell him yourself then. Just be grateful we have a fresh one here. This is what we've been waiting for." I was frozen with confusion and fear. What the hell was going on? Were they talking about me? Unsure what was happening, I crept back behind the counter. A few moments later, Joe's door opened. All three of them came out and walked towards me. "Okay guys, listen. We're doing very well so far, but I think, as I've told you two already, we need to find new ways to bring in more customers. I got a call from headquarters and they... Al, you okay?" I stuttered out a yes and smiled. My armpits were sweaty and I could tell it was noticeable. Deep down I knew I had to get out of there. I just needed to. "Al, I can see you're still not feeling well. I get it. Food can be very hit or miss. Come here. Let's get you a glass of water. Keeping suspicions low, I agreed. Sitting down at a dining room table, I took a few sips of water as Joe finished talking about bringing in new customers. When that was over, I quickly got up. I must have been too quick because Joe and Tyler looked at me suddenly. I stuttered, saying I needed to use the bathroom. Joe nodded with a smile. I slowly backed up and turned around. Right before I needed to make a left to get to the bathroom, I turned right and bolted for the front door. When I was a few steps away, I felt something hard hit the back of my head. I fell to my knee, and a chloroform rag was shoved in my face. I passed out. I eventually woke up in a strange place. It was very dark, but I managed to see the outlines of a couple dozen people standing a few feet away. I was sitting on a stool with my ankles and wrists tied together. Once my eyes adjusted, I saw the outlines of Joe, Tyler, and Jasmine approach. They had robes on, hoods over their heads. Joe then said, "Al, you saw what type of slop we have to eat here. We are all starving for something better, something more. I'm happy to say you have been selected. You should feel honored, being the next chosen one for our Lord. We all appreciate your cooperation and will make sure you are rewarded. But now, we begin." Suddenly, all of the figures looked up as they started chanting. Their eyes began to glow a shade of yellow. They kept repeating the same chant, something I couldn't understand. Then Joe's booming voice started reciting. "O Holy One, your loyalists present to thee a new spirit for us to feast, a fresh soul for us all, in the hopes we will be nourished again." The room around me started to rumble. I then saw a bright yellow glow emerge behind me. I jumped from the stool, falling to the ground as I saw what was happening. An altar was set up with a dozen red candles, and a large gap was forming in the ground in front of it. The yellow glow was spilling out of it, before I saw a giant, hideously deformed hand fly out of it, slamming the ground. Its fingers, abnormally long and gray, with long black fingernails, began clawing the floor. The other hand flew out, slamming onto the altar, crushing it. All the candles faded out. I struggled with the rope. The knot was double-tied. Its body then emerged. It was a strange, shadowy figure. Small ripples flew off its figure like a fire. I saw the outline of a face in the figure, mouth wide open, sockets empty. I began thrusting my wrists around, trying to slip my hands out. As the creature finished emerging, the glow disappeared and the loyalist suddenly took a knee. The creature, I could tell, was staring right into my soul. As I began sweating hard, I was almost relieved to feel the rope moving down my right hand. Then the people chanted the same thing. "The holy creature always has the first bite. We are grateful. We are grateful." Suddenly the creature began to glow red. The room shook again. I was able to yank my hand out of the rope. The loyalists were on one knee, heads lowered towards the ground. I untied the other hand. The creature's figure began stretching out, the light continuing to glow. Red streams started to circle it. I fumbled with the knot around my ankles. As I miraculously got it off, I stumbled to my feet right as the creature screeched. I bolted. I leapt over the loyalists and slammed through the door in the back of the room. I was back on the street. I recognized it. It was close to Checkers. Those fools only took me down the road. I knew what I needed to do. This place was not my own. I wasn't dreaming. I was in a different reality, a different dimension. There was a portal in the fridge, and I failed to recognize the signs. The uncomfortably clean seats, the friendly people, my coworkers being super nice, and that food I ate. They lured me there. They tried to keep me happy and unaware. They wanted me to stay. They wanted to devour my soul, but they slipped and took me to that repulsive cafe. I had to get the hell out of there. As I started sprinting down the road, I heard the screams of the creature echoing through the building. After I ran about a block, the creature flew out of the building. It started using its disgusting hands to propel forward towards me, the loyalists following next to it, their eyes glowing a bright yellow color, full of fury and hunger. The environment around me began changing. The sky went completely black. The buildings began turning an eerie shade of red. The grass, where it used to grow, turned into red sand, like what I saw next to the dumpster. Black puddles also began forming in the road. As I kept running, the world around me kept breaking apart. More red sand appeared, and the buildings beside me began almost melting. The creature was gaining on me. I had to start leaping over black puddles to avoid them. Jumping over the last, I ended up dropping my apartment keys. I cursed as they fell into the puddle. As they fell in, I saw black, goopy hands begin viciously tearing them apart. Too late to salvage them. Breaking through Checker's front door, I made my way to the fridge. The creature slammed through the door as well, about 3 steps behind me. In the fridge, I pushed aside boxes and dove for the corner. I could see the ripple in the wall again. The creature behind me leapt. I felt myself lurch forward. Everything then went black again. I woke up on the floor of the Checkers fridge. My head was throbbing, boxes laid around me. I heard Joe's voice as he entered the fridge. "What the devil are you doing in here? What happened?" He came over and knelt as I began sitting up. "Well," Joe said, I think I tried to move these boxes out of the way at once. They must have fallen on my head and knocked me out." "Oh God." Joe, eyeing me down, then sighed. "You should get some water, son." He guided me to a table. Tyler and Jasmine were behind the counter staring at me. "Good Lord, Al, your head's bleeding. What happened?" Jasmine cried. "Boxes fell on his head," Joe said as he sat me down. "Albert, your pupils dilated, and your forehead is bloody. I'm getting you an ambulance." Once at the hospital, a doctor diagnosed me with a concussion and told me I had to stay the night so they could monitor me. The next day, I was cleared to leave and went home. Traumatized from Checkers, I began searching for more jobs. I ended up applying to a dozen. Over the next week, I got much better and had a few interviews scheduled for later. Returning to Checkers, I found myself frantically checking the fridge. No portal seemed to be there. No ripples. Over the next 2 months, things seemed much better. I ended up getting a new job for a firm across town. I left Checkers and moved into a house. I even called my ex-wife one night. During the 2-hour call, we slowly began repairing our relationship. We swore we'd try to become friends again. She even apologized for divorce court and wanted to give me back some of the things she won over me. Then one day, I was out in my backyard. I had just shared a quick conversation with my friendly neighbor and began planting some flowers. On the 3rd flower, I dug and felt something tough. Removing the dirt, I saw dark red sand. I froze. I rubbed my eyes. Dark red sand. I looked all around me. Everything had appeared normal, but the sand was still there in front of me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had not escaped. I was still there. I tried to act cool. I went to my garage and grabbed my bike. I knew where I needed to go. Cars drove through normally. People on the sidewalk were chatting amongst each other. No one acknowledged me with that weird, friendly attitude. I had a plan. I'd casually go back into Checkers and say I forgot something when I quit, then hope for the best. It was all I could think of. Once there, I entered. I did not see Joe, Tyler, or Jasmine. Expected, since this was in the middle of the afternoon. The restaurant had no customers. 2 employees were behind the counter. I didn't recognize either of them. Walking up, the cashier greeted me. "Hello, sir. What can I get for you today?" I then explained to them how I was a former worker who quit the night shift. I had only just remembered that I forgot to take something with me. I was being annoyed by one coworker and decided to hide it in the fridge. The cashier's eyebrow raised. "Fridge? Why would you hide something in the fridge?" Quickly I responded. Well, a few months ago. I remember there being a lot of inventory in the fridge. To keep it away from my coworker, I hid it on the bottom shelf. It was supposed to be a birthday present for my sister, but I forgot about it until just today. I only hid it to prevent my coworker from possibly breaking it. The other employee then asked why I needed it so urgently. I hesitated. Well, just wanted to get it out of your way. And I want to grab it if it's still here. I could make it a Christmas gift instead. The cashier asked what the gift was. I responded that it was a locket that she had wanted for years. I had finally found it and was going to surprise her with it. The cashier suddenly lowered his eyebrows. Hold on. If she was desperately looking for one for years, and you miraculously found one, how did you suddenly just forget it? I didn't expect that. I don't know, honestly. He continued. And how did you not realize on her birthday that you forgot it? You certainly implied that your sister's birthday passed, since you wanted to give it to her for Christmas instead. He got me. Well, I guess I'm just a bad brother. The cashier saw through it. Wait here, sir. I'm getting my manager. A few moments later, another man came out. Sir, I've been told about your issue. We just had the fridge cleared out 2 weeks ago. It's certainly gone by now, and it doesn't seem like you are being very truthful with us. Former employee or not, you are not allowed behind the counter unless you still work here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. I couldn't do anything other than just nod and walk out slowly. I could hear the three of them mumbling behind me. I couldn't tell what they were saying, but I had a hunch. Exiting Checkers, I began to think about my next steps. I started slowly walking down the road with my bike when I saw the sky. The bright afternoon sky began to slowly darken. I then began to hear sirens blaring everywhere. The fresh green grass began to morph into that dark red sand again. In the distance I could see dozens, if not hundreds of yellow lights, and some faint yelling. As I began to back up, I jumped when I heard someone suddenly say, "Well, well, well, Albert." Quickly turning, I saw the three employees, eyes wide open and bloodshot. Smiles were abnormally wide. You made our Lord very angry when you tried to escape before. Thankfully, its planning skills are better than all. It commanded us to trick you once more. The waiting game for a guaranteed prize was worth the cause. Here we go. I heard the screech from behind me. I looked. Hundreds of loyalists were running right towards me, eyes filled with more fury and hatred than before, and behind them emerged the creature. It was not happy. I froze. I didn't expect what happened next. The creature was so upset that it began moving down its own loyalists. Dozens of wails and screams as their figures vaporized inside the creature. They tried to get out of its way, but there were too many of them. It was time. I was suddenly grabbed by two of the employees. "We have him, your Holy One," the third said, as he ran forward and took a knee. I struggled, the grips of the loyalists tight around my biceps. I flexed, wiggled, tried everything. Then, in an act of desperation, I jumped up and propelled my legs into both loyalists as hard as I could. The act was enough for them to loosen their grip as they stumbled backwards and fell. I hit the ground hard, right near a bubbling black puddle. I rolled out of the way right as a goopy hand launched towards me. Getting to my feet, the creature was now a block away from me, and the loyalists were just getting up. The third, still kneeling, turned and saw me as I ran into Checkers. "You fools, get him! He's getting away!" The loyalist, I could tell, was vaporized. The other two scrambled to chase me down. Entering Checkers, I made it for the fridge. As I went past the counter, I saw the two other loyalists shoving their way into the door. And right as they made it through, I heard the creature roar. Two other agonizing screams faded, as I knew they were gone. Entering the fridge doors, I heard the creature charge through the dining room. I shoved numerous boxes out of my way. I found the portal again. It was rippling again. The door swung off its hinges as the creature roared once more. I went for the portal. It went for my leg. It touched me. I had a searing pain worse than pins and needles fly up my left leg. I screamed right as I found myself being sucked into the portal. I emerged on the other side. I did not black out. I was back in the fridge again. Turning back, I heard a quiet roar as the portal rippled like crazy. I could tell the creature was trying to claw its way through. Without thinking, I grabbed the heaviest box I could find and slammed it as hard as I could into the portal. It worked. The portal shattered. Glass fragments flew everywhere. The furious screech of the creature faded as the bond between our two worlds was broken. Moving the box over, I noticed something unusual. No fragments of glass, no odd feeling in my leg, no ripples in the wall. Against my better judgment, I slowly reached for the wall. I stopped centimeters away. I was not pulled in. Then, without thinking, I slammed my hand into the wall. Nothing happened. It was just a normal wall again. I began giggling like I was losing my mind. I looked around the fridge. Everything was as I had remembered before, but I still wasn't convinced. Moments later, a very angry Joe stormed into the fridge. "Albert, what in the world do you think you're doing? I'm not paying you to sit on your butt and throw boxes around like you're in first grade." I smiled for a moment, but then got up, pissed. "Hey, stay the hell away from me. Who are you?" Joe scoffed. "It's obviously me, Joe. Who else would I be?" After a moment of silence, Joe's eyes widened for a moment before returning to normal. He told me I needed to talk with him in his office immediately. I obliged, keeping a close eye on him. Tyler tried to come over to see what happened, but I shot him a dirty look and he backed off. I didn't trust anything. In his office, Joe tried to calm me down. He was a bit arrogant, but his attitude helped me think I was back in the real world. I eventually explained what I thought happened, in which Joe gave me a baffling look. He said that was ridiculous, asked if I was okay, and offered to call an ambulance for me. Everything I said, he shook off as a hallucination or dream, as those events were impossible. I could see a glimmer in his eye like he was lying to me, but what could I do at that point? He asked if I wanted an ambulance again, but I shook my head and quit on the spot. Joe asked I reconsider and offered me a raise, but I declined. He wished me the best and said I was welcome back whenever. Since that moment, I've had episodes of paranoia and nightmares. However, I've been able to fully convince myself that I'm back in the real world, and I've since began rebuilding my relationship with my ex-wife too, for real this time. We're friends again, and she's been very supportive of me and my mental health struggles. While things have slowly gotten better, I couldn't get Checkers out of my mind. Something fishy was going on. I wasn't sure what the hell it was, but I knew something was wrong. But I got away, and I'm never going back to that Checkers again. Please, everyone, stay safe out there. I'm okay now. I just hope the rest of you will be too. The problem started a year after my sister, Emma, disappeared. No one knew what happened to her. She was out in the woods hiking along the trail near our family's cabin when she vanished without a trace. The police searched for days, but all they found was her backpack, half buried beneath a pile of leaves. They called it an accident, maybe a wild animal. The police eventually chalked it up to coyotes. My grandmother, on the other hand, swore up and down the creature in the woods took her. Back when I was a kid, that would have rattled me, but as an adult, I only found it inappropriate. I drove out there alone one crisp autumn evening, hoping to find some remembrance of her. The cabin sat in the heart of the forest, isolated, just as it had been when we were kids. It was a place of comfort, but now it felt frozen in time. That night, I sat outside by the fire, the crackling flames offering some semblance of warmth as the sun sank beneath the horizon. As the night deepened, the forest grew quiet. The usual sounds of crickets and owls fell silent. Then the wind stilled. It took me until I was halfway back to the cabin, after the fire simmered out, to notice the usually annoying frogs by the near pond had stopped their chattering. And then I heard a low, deep growl coming from the darkness just beyond the tree line. My blood ran cold. It didn't sound like any animal I knew. It was guttural and strange, almost feminine. I stood frozen, trying to convince myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew better. The growl came again, closer this time. My heart raced. I began sprinting to the cabin. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't want to find out. As I fumbled with the door, I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching on the dry leaves, the sound echoing through the air. I could feel its gaze as I finally stumbled inside. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I rushed to the windows and pulled the blinds shut, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there. Then I heard the thing again, the sound of scraping claws dragging against wood. I turned towards the noise at the back of the cabin and see the other window I forgot to close. The moonlight was shining enough to show a shadowy figure walking past, the shape of something tall, too tall. It was moving, jerking in an unnatural way, as if it was struggling to keep itself still. And then it stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The figure slowly turned toward the window. Its face was a twisted mockery of a human's, stretched and warped, with eyes an eerie yellow. I felt my stomach drop. The thing outside had a familiar, grotesque smile looking straight at me. I knew it then. This wasn't some wild animal. This was something far worse. I stumbled backward, my mind racing with memories of Emma. She had been here in these woods a year ago. Had it taken her? Was it out there now, waiting for me to step into its trap? I grabbed the rifle my grandfather had left behind and held it tightly, but deep down, I knew a weapon wouldn't save me from something like this. The door shuddered as something pressed against it from the other side. "Katie," a voice called. It was soft and coaxing, but then it grew darker, more sinister. "Come here. I've missed you." My blood ran cold. It was Emma's voice, but I knew it wasn't really her. My sister was gone. This thing was using her voice to lure me out. It wanted me to step into the woods, to make the same mistake she had. I couldn't move. My hands were shaking, and my mind raced with everything I heard from my grandma. If I went out there, I would be next. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The scraping sound came again, this time closer, the wood creaking under the weight of whatever was out there. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My mind flashed to the year before. Emma. I remembered her smile, her laugh. I remembered the way she used to call my name when we were kids. Her voice so full of life. But now it was just a whisper in the dark. The back door crashed open. I shot. I don't know how I made it to my car. My legs were moving on their own, carrying me as fast as they could out of the house. The thing screeched from the house louder than any siren I've ever heard. I reached the car and managed to lock the door. I looked at the cabin and froze. Standing in the doorway was the creature my grandmother described all those years ago. The long limbs, the eyes, the claws. I started pulling out of the driveway as fast as I could, mentally kicking myself for not just driving off right away. "Come here," it yelled, chasing me. The sound of its claws kicking up tremendous amounts of gravel. "We can be together again." I began crying, the sound of my sister bringing hurt and confusion. This isn't how I want to remember her. My car almost did a donut from how quickly I turned to the main road, the thing still following me. How I wished that it wasn't the middle of the night. Maybe then something could have scared this thing off. I wished a lot of things that night. I prayed for the first time in years. The thoughts clouded my head so much I almost wrecked. A cold, dry laugh then sent chills crawling up my spine. "You can't run from me, sister. You never could." And then it jumped in front of my car. I didn't really think it fully through when I pressed on the gas, but I did it. My car went right over the monster and kept going until I was 1,000,000% certain it wasn't chasing me anymore. Only then did I stop at a gas station and buy so many energy drinks. It could stop an elephant. I haven't been back since. But my parents are planning a big family reunion for later this year at the cabin. And I don't know how to tell them why. It's a terrible idea.